This is the weekend edition of Fear and Greed, Australia's most popular business podcast. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, our weekend show, it's always a bit of fun, really, isn't it? We each nominate what we think is the biggest story of the week, the most remarkable story, the sleeper story, and our favourite story. I describe it as a bit of fun because we are both fairly competitive people, and we turn it into a bit of a competition, and obviously we couldn't judge it for ourselves, so we have to bring in a fifth wheel to adjudicate for us. Adam Lang, our Fear and Greed colleague, good morning.
Good morning, Michael. Good morning, Sean.
Good morning, Adam. What I have appreciated in the last few weekend editions, and it's probably a reflection of Michael and my competitiveness, is that it's sort of come down to let's abuse the judge sessions, which have been unfair on you, Adam.
It's like a normal day at work.
That makes it sound like Fear and Greed is a terrible place to work. It's not, unless you're Adam, in which case it is torture.
Then it might be, yeah.
Indeed.
I always have a safe word. I know I'm okay.
That is very, very true and very nice, subtle reference to our other podcast, Adam, Safe Word by Fear and Greed. So that's a little shout out there. We should get into it because there are some big stories, some good stories to discuss this week. And Adam, have you got your score sheet ready and your criteria for judging the categories this week?
You know I do, Michael. And of course, the criteria are always subject to evolution. So we'll just see where these stories bring us.
What I love about Adam's score sheet, and the listeners wouldn't know this, is that he sends it to Michael and I afterwards with detailed notes about why he chose one or other story, which, of course, if you lose, I just throw it away. I have no interest in reading that whatsoever. If I win, I just
frame it.
Pour over
print
it.
it out.
Absolutely. Yep. Yeah, that's right.
And the thing is, you then find yourself studying the score sheet to say, okay, well, what did he like? What can I use? What can I use for next week? Only to then turn up the following week and find that Adam has changed the criteria entirely for what he's judging it on.
Consistency isn't your strength, Adam. Anyway, let's jump into it, Michael.
Well, that sounds like a perfect lead into the biggest story of the week. And actually, it sounds like a great way for you to start, Sean, just straight off the back of that compliment to Adam. What was your biggest story this week?
Really, there was too much to choose from this week, but I'll have to go with financial markets. The really big news was the US Federal Reserve lifting interest rates by 75 basis points, the most in nearly 30 years, and the Fed said it would do it again at the next meeting. That had ramifications around the world, literally. Initially, investors thought at least the Fed is getting on top of inflation, and markets actually rose on Wall Street and here in Australia. Then it all turned round, the sell-off continued. People are worried about a recession in the US, in Europe, in Asia, in Australia. The ASX is now trading around levels last seen in late 2020. Cryptos have been hammered. In fact, the viability of many digital currencies are now in question. And this week, some crypto exchanges suspended redemptions. So people who hold cryptocurrencies in crypto wallets can't get their money. That is a crisis. The Aussie dollar fell back to 68.5 US cents as investors flooded to the US dollars. Bond yields hit 3 and 4 year highs, and still people don't want to invest in them. Markets around the world are now in bear territory. That's down 20% from their peaks. Just like 1987, just like 2007, just like 2020. It was a massive week in financial markets. Michael.
Sean, it is very hard for me, number one, going second, but it's also very hard to beat financial markets in such a big week. And it's really hard to beat you when you've done what I like to refer to as doing an Aylmer and actually kind of group a whole bunch of stories in there in one with an overall category of financial markets, because you've got the Federal Reserve, you've got the ASX, you've got the Aussie dollar, you've got crypto, you've got all these things. So well played you. But I reckon I have the story to beat it, the energy crisis, because it really kind of came to a bit of a head this week because for weeks we've had warnings of kind of mega price rises, doubling in some cases as gas and coal prices soar. Now we've got generators running below capacity due to technical and supply problems, just as demand is absolutely soaring because of the cold snap that's really hitting the eastern parts of Australia. The headlines this week were all about the risk of blackouts, with New South Wales and Queensland residents told to conserve energy. Then we had the Australian energy market operator suspending the electricity spot market for most of the country, with the ability to force generators to meet demand. Power companies obviously want to know how much they'll get paid, how long this is going to last. One coal company is blaming it all on the rush to get rid of coal. There is so much in this. It does get a little bit complicated, but the thing is, and the reason why this is such a big story is because it affects every single one of us. It really kind of goes to, I suppose, one of the most basic things that you really kind of come to expect in this country, that when you flick the switch, the light comes on. And without meaning to appeal too much of the fear side of fear and greed, suddenly that doesn't seem so certain. What do you think, Adam?
Honourable attempt, Michael, but Sean gets this one. Financial markets are definitely the biggest story for the week for me. I think it's incredible. So, yeah, I'll just leave it there. I think it's incredible.
Oh, okay.
There we go, just like that.
Well, I think you've both asked me to be briefer, haven't you? So I'm doing my attempt as a judge to do that.
Neither of us ever thought you would.
Yeah, no, I just assumed you just keep crapping on like normal. Anyway, what I would say, Michael, thank you, Adam. I appreciate the win. I think it was the biggest story. I think you've miscategorised it, though.
Ooh.
Because I think what you're talking about, the energy crisis, is totally remarkable. The fact that the regulator stepped in and took control of the market.
Let's seamlessly kind of move into most remarkable. So we've put the biggest story category behind us, and yes, you won that one. So now I want to hear you hijack my story now for the most remarkable, please.
Well, what I was going to say is that, I mean, I did think it was the most remarkable story, but I can't have it because you've put it up as the biggest.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So I'm going to go. I'll have to give you the second most remarkable story of the week. How about that?
Okay, yes, please do.
Look, I think it was a Fair Work Commission deciding to lift the minimum wage by 5.2%. Why is it remarkable? Because it hasn't happened since 2006, and arguably the economy is in no position to afford it. Now, around 184,000 workers will get an extra $40 a week. Around 2.5 million workers who are covered by a modern award will get an extra 4.6%. You know that employees beat the employers when the head of the ACTU, Sally McManus, comes out and says she's happy with the decision. Now, I'm not against low-paid workers getting a pay rise, and I think they deserve 5%. What's remarkable is that the Fair Work Commission, at a time when inflation is heading towards 7% and interest rates are rising fast, is courageous enough to give such an increase. That is remarkable, and dare I say, it wouldn't have happened under a coalition government. What about you, Michael? Your most remarkable story?
Sean, you are picking some cracking stories this week. You're making it very easy for Adam, I suspect. But so I'm going to appeal directly to Adam, because I know, Adam, that you love a good story about Australian companies doing big things on the global stage. So for a while, we've been talking about Bubs Australia, which obviously makes baby formula. A remarkable development this week. But first, a little bit of background. The US has had a baby formula crisis. A major producer there had a contamination scare. 4 babies died, and it sparked a major shortage of what is an essential product. The call went out for international assistance, international suppliers, and the little Aussie company Bubs put up its hand. President Joe Biden tweeted about it. The FDA approved it, and away they went. Deals with supermarket chains followed, then a Walmart distribution deal. The scale of this whole story is what I find incredible. The US government chartering 747s to fly tins of Bubs formula to the States, then the largest retailer in the world stocking it. And then the thing that really, I think, Adam, that you would find most remarkable as well, is that a little Australian company was able to move so quickly to scale up production and meet that demand. And now its share price is up nearly 80% in a month. Everything about this story is remarkable.
Okay. Very good attempt again, Michael. It is a terrific individual company story and truly remarkable. But in terms of scale and impact, the Fair Work Commission decision is really the one for me that is just so pervasive and will have massive effect and remarkable.
So that sounds like it's probably the biggest story of the week, perhaps not the most remarkable. This is, again, the shifting criteria kind of every...
It's more remarkable.
You know, the funny thing, when you were telling your story, and I was talking about I did the Fair Work Commission, that was great. When you were telling your story, the more you talked about it, Michael, the more I thought, it is quite remarkable that this little Bubs Australia Company. I thought I'd lost that for sure, but there you go.
No, then you had that little mystery element, which is Adam's criteria that came in and snatched the victory for you. So no, look, I feel like I'm the underdog in this episode.
2-0 down, Michael. You are.
You know what? I like it. It is the role I'm born to play. We will be back in a moment with the sleeper story of the week. All right, we're looking for the sleeper story of the week, so maybe the one that's not getting the attention that it deserves or that might become a bigger story further down the track. Sean, do you mind if I go first on this one, only because you've had a couple of starts so far?
Please.
I actually don't know whether this one's going to win. It's a bit of an unusual, so it's not a good start. It's a bit of an unusual sleeper story for me this week, and it is a bit of a risk doing a technology-based story when you have Adam the Luddite that's adjudicating this. Anyway.
Compliments usually work, but hey, go with your technique.
Nothing works with you, Adam. I've learnt this now. There was a major event that passed by this week without much attention. So it's a sleeper story. Internet Explorer. For a long time, the most popular web browser around reached its use-by date this week. A year ago, Microsoft announced that the end would come for Internet Explorer on June 15, 2022. They said it was basically too old, too slow, not secure enough, plenty of problems. Microsoft has a newer browser called Edge. The reason I think this is such a great sleeper story is obviously because it just happened.
It might be because Adam still uses Internet Explorer.
He's wondered why for the last few days he hasn't been able to get on the internet.
That is genius.
The reason why I think it is such a great sleeper, though, is because it just shows how quickly the tech space innovates and moves on and just keeps on pushing forward. Because in the 2000s, Internet Explorer had market share above 90%. That is huge. And obviously then along with Windows really helped Microsoft to dominate. Now you've got Google Chrome, that's the big browser with 65% market share. Internet Explorer, once the absolute gorilla, is no more. And its successor, Edge, has just 4% of the browser market. I just find that kind of scale of change and how quickly we've moved on from something that basically defined the internet, I find that just crazy. And the fact that it happened this week and no one really noticed, it's a sleeper story.
So Internet Explorer, so Edge only has 4% of the browser market.
That's right.
Remarkable. I'm not sure about a sleeper, but remarkable.
God, we've really kind of mixed up our categories this week, haven't we? We should just put them all into the pot and then just mix them up and pick them out at random, which is it's kind of what I think Adam does, just picks the winner out at random anyway. So
let me tell you about my sleeper story. It's the one about BHP wanting to close Australia's largest thermal coal mine about 15 years before the coal actually runs out. It's a sleeper because of what it means for federal and state governments. No one is talking about that. BHP is proposing to continue operating the Mount Arthur coal mine in the Hunter Valley in New South Wales until 2030 and then close the site and rehabilitate the land, effectively meaning no one else can actually mine it. It makes BHP look like a good environmental citizen and it passes the problem of how to power the state of New South Wales back to government, and that's exactly where it should be. The state government will now have to decide whether to keep the coal mine running. It won't be the private sector, BHP's decision. Why would it keep it running? Well, to keep the lights on. Simple as that. New South Wales and all the states haven't got enough renewable energy to power their regions, and they won't have enough by 2030 because of a chronic underinvestment over many, many years. In the next few years, other state governments will face exactly the same dilemma. As I said at the time, BHP has made it clear it takes its net zero promise seriously. Now, the New South Wales government has to decide if it does as well. People aren't thinking of this story in that manner, but I guarantee inside state governments, they're all thinking about it. That's why it's the sleeper story of the week.
Geez, these are both really good and they're both about disruption, right? So I'm going to give this one to Michael because of the scale of the Internet Explorer impact in the last 20 years and across
Adam,
the world.
You and 72 other people are the only ongoing users of Internet Explorer for the record, but that's okay.
I'm parlaying, look, to explain my mystique in criteria.
This will be good.
It's unexplainable. I hope listeners have an hour or so. Go on.
if you look at where Google came along and smashed Explorer, it's almost unfathomable that anything could happen to Google now, but it can. And so I think Internet Explorer's rise and fall really illustrates that point on a global scale.
I love your agreeing in the background there, Mike.
Yeah, I was basically
smart,
just about to say
smart.
yes, Adam. It's a cautionary tale, really, isn't it? Never get too comfortable in a leading position because an underdog perhaps, could just come along right at the end. And
well, we'll see if it ends up that way. But the BHP one, certainly in a week when there's been other big company decisions in terms of green energy, what a massive week. And both of them are huge stories, probably sleepers in the context of everything else that's going on. A narrow loss to you on that one, Sean.
Fair enough.
All right. Okay, favourite story. I'll go first on this one as well, if that's okay. Basically, because mine's pretty short. Favourite story for me this week was actually really kind of some impressive coordination that you kind of don't really see much between the New South Wales Liberal government and the Victorian Labor government this week. And the winners out of all of this are kids and families. So from 2025 in Victoria and 2030 in New South Wales, children are going to have access to a year of free preschool, basically 5 days a week of what they describe as play-based learning rather than the 1 or 2 days that many kids currently do. It's going to benefit the kids, obviously, because they're starting earlier at what is such a critical time for vocab, for literacy, for numeracy. It will also then benefit parents, in particular mothers, giving them more opportunities to return to work, and then there'll be an economic benefit from that as well. Put it all together, intergovernmental cooperation, impact on the economy, parents and kids all winning. Maybe I'm biased just because I've got young kids, but I think this story's a cracker.
So very altruistic of you, Michael, and dare I say totally self-serving?
No, not totally. There's reasonably self-serving.
Yeah,
yes.
I mean, I paid plenty of money putting my kids through preschool. Do I get a refund?
Oh, you would. You would be lining up there, submitting your invoice, your receipt. Yeah.
No, it's hard to argue this. The idea that, kids and mums and dads get an extra chance. What I really like about this story, Michael, is the fact that up until the age of 5, we all know kids develop very, very quickly. And capturing kids who aren't developing quite as fast as others, there's so much more room for improvement if you can capture that at 3 or 4 rather than at 5. And I must say that's one thing that the whole play-based learning will do. It will allow experts, clinicians, to capture kids who aren't developing quite as quickly. And I think that's a wonderful thing. Anyway, sorry, I'm just arguing for your story, aren't I?
I wasn't even going to say anything. It's doing such a good job of this. I'm just going to shut up.
I mean, that's such a feel-good, nice story. I'm just going to have to go to the other end of the spectrum for my favourite story.
Go on.
It was the Julius Baer Group's 2022 Global Wealth and Lifestyle Report. Basically, it shows the most expensive city to live in when you're really, really, really filthy rich. Now... It's my favourite story because what a totally ridiculous concept. Do you really think people are counting their pennies when they're really, really, really mega rich? I don't think so. Shanghai came in at number 1, just in case you're interested. London at number 2, then Taipei, Hong Kong, Singapore, Monaco, Zurich, Tokyo, and at number 9, Sydney. Now, rounding out the top 10 was Paris. I love the fact that the report considers stuff like the cost of residential property. I get that. Cars. Yep. Bikes. Airfares. Business schools. Designer handbags. Shoes. Suits. Watches. But my favourite consideration is the cost of hiring a lawyer. Apparently, that's gone through the roof. I love looking at the lives of the rich and famous and just how much they have to pay for lawyers. What a cracking story. My favourite story of the week.
Adam, it's a pretty easy decision. It kind of boils down to, is it the kiddies or the fat cats?
Oh, indeed. Sean's envy and greed as his favourite story, or indeed the kids. So, Michael, you win this one. I think this is fabulous. Two reasons. Terrific initiative, as you outlined. Second is, we've seen so many fractious relationships between states and federal government. And here we have, again, not just COVID rules being coordinated between New South Wales and Victoria, but now this initiative being coordinated between the states of New South Wales and Victoria, with opposing sides of government, Liberal and Labor, both for a terrific initiative. I think this is fabulous. So that is my favourite story for the week.
This is where we end up at 2-2 again. Well, what a surprise.
Well, I'm going to give you a bonus, Sean.
What?
Which might tip you over the edge. Maybe not.
Tip me over the edge.
I loved your really, 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 really rich description, which was very Zoolander-esque.
Yes.
Really, really, really
Yes,
good looking.
really.
So I thought that was a lovely reference. Not enough to tip the scales, though. So I'm going to give it 2-2 this week.
Fair enough. I'm happy for you to win that, Michael. Favourite story. It is a great story.
Do you reckon next week our goal is for someone to win? Let's just we'll just make it a very simple goal. We just want a winner next
what
week.
we could do with you, because you do such detailed notes, surely you can almost do like a countback system.
I could. A weighting.
Yeah, something like that. So, in the remarkable story, was Bubs Australia Fair Work Commission. What was the gap there vis-a-vis the sleeper story, which was BHP versus the ridiculous technology story that won, right? Maybe you can get the weightings.
I love it.
Oh, we must be boring the listeners by now.
No, next week we are going to revolutionise this podcast. So stay tuned.
Going to have a winner.
Give some kind of science to these judgments.
Now, what a hook, what a teaser. That will get people tuning in again next week. Thank you very much, Adam.
Thank you, Michael.
And thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
Make sure you're following the podcast. Join us online on LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. And remember, if you've been enjoying Safe Word by Fear and Greed, which used to be our Sunday edition of Fear and Greed quite a while ago, it's no longer available through the Fear and Greed playlist, but you can find it wherever you listen to podcasts. It is out every Thursday. Just search for Safe Word by Fear and Greed and make sure you hit subscribe or follow. I'm Michael Thompson. Have a great weekend.